Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I'm talking about the new beneficial ownership reporting requirements. Maybe you have heard about them, maybe you haven't. There's lots of buzz about them. What you need to know if you own or are in control of any type of entity, that this is a brand new requirement for you to report now at the federal level for your entity. So, what does BOI stand for? It's beneficial ownership information, and we're going to dive into the details. So before we get in, this video is for informational purposes only. This is not to be construed as legal, professional tax advice. Okay, so what do we do now if we own an LLC, if we own a corp, if we own an S corp? We register those entities at the state level. So if we're in California, we're doing business here, we're registering our LLC with California. We file annual reports. Here it's called a statement of information, and we pay annual fees to the state to do business here. Every state has different rules, but the oversight of our entities is generally at the state level. Now, we do obtain an EIN, a federal tax ID, and that is the ID that we use to file our federal tax returns for our entities and pay payroll taxes. But the oversight of our entities is currently at the state level. We've never had to report contact information or ownership information to at the federal level other than what we put on our tax returns before. So, what is BOI reporting? It's brand new to 2024. It is a new federal reporting requirement and it's mandatory. Its oversight is by FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Their reasoning behind this is to kind of spearhead and get in front of anti-money laundering, criminal activity, tax evasion, and have more oversight into small business. And that's really who it's affecting, is small business owners. So this isn't new in that it wasn't passed recently. It was actually part of the Corporate Transparency Act passed by Congress back in 2021. It just didn't go into effect until 2024. So as of January 1st, 2024, any new entities formed this year, you have 30 days to file this form. Now, there's an extension, so you really have 90 days. But going forward, it's going to be 30 days is kind of the key thing to remember as far as a deadline going forward. If you have an existing entity, so if you had a business that was registered in your state prior to January 1st of 2024, your timeline now is you have to file this new BOI report before the end of 2024. So technically by January 1st of 2025. We, as at the time of this recording, I'm in July of 2024, so you have a few months to get a handle on this. And after this, watching this video, you're going to have enough information that you need where you can file this report on your own. So who is reporting? We are reporting on the entities, but what they really want is not just the entity information, but the beneficial owners information, us as individuals. So we need to have information to report on anyone who owns more than 25% of the entity or has exercising control. So, kind of our officer level positions. If you have board of directors, if you're in a control position, then you're likely going to be looped into reporting for that entity. Now, something to note is if we're a lot of my tax clients are single owner S corps or LLCs. If they're married and if they're in California, California is a community property state. If something happened to me, my husband would inherit my S corporation. So he has indirect beneficial ownership. So when I report on my S corporation, I have to report also on my spouse that he is also a beneficial owner in my corporation. So knowing the details of who to report is kind of critical on where we're collecting information to report it up to our FinCEN report. Now, there's more information on the website. At the end of this video, I have the links. Down below, I have the links to the FinCEN website where you can go online, and they have tons and tons of frequently asked questions that you can go through, and there's all kinds of one-off scenarios that might specifically apply to your situation. But just know, in general, if we're looking at small business owners, if you have an LLC, if you have an S corporation, you need to be reporting who the owners are. And if they own more than 25% interest and you're in a community property state, you also need to be reporting on their spouses. So exceptions. Who does not have to be reported on? So minor children, if your children are under 18, any employees that work in your company that don't have control or ownership officer roles, creditors, if you have a future ownership interest but you're not a current owner, these are your exceptions and are not included in your BOI report. So what are we reporting on for individuals? This is what we need to collect in advance, is pretty much just our contact information, legal name, our primary residence where we live, date of birth, and a valid ID. So it can be a driver's license, it can be a passport, it must not be expired, and you actually have to have a copy of it. I believe it's JPEG. It says on the website where you actually upload it as part of the report. So collecting that information for all the owners that you're going to report on in advance so that you have that. And this is going to be a key part of when you have to file again. So I'm going to come back to that. But if you're collecting information, one is to identify who you have to report on, two is to get their info. And then from the entity side, it's just basic information. You've got your entity name, the address of the business, where it's formed, what state, and its tax ID. So this isn't an annual filing. With most states, you have to file every year or every other year. This is a one-time filing. However, when any of the information changes that you file, you have to update it. So if I change addresses as one of the owners or one of the beneficial owners, or if my ID that I uploaded expires, now I have 30 days to file a new report. And this is where people are going to get caught up in future years. Most people are going to be able to refile this year and get it done. It's tracking and monitoring those expiration dates, and making an updated filing is where they're going to get caught up. So definitely keep a list of your expiration dates for whatever identification document you're uploading, because if once that expires, you've got 30 days to file a new report. So again, just going back, new entities, if you're forming a new entity in 2024, you have 30 days. You want to file your BOI report when you're going through and just forming your entity. If you were an entity prior to 2024, you have until the end of the year. So you have until the end of January 1st to 2025. So the end of 2024 to file your report. Here's what's crazy, and it's kind of absurd, in my opinion, is the penalties. So if we don't file, or if we file and we have a change of information or ID expires that was uploaded and we don't update it within the 30-day window, these are the penalties. It's crazy. Hoping to see some kind of oversight or information that comes out. Again, this is a brand new program, and so there hasn't been a lot of information on if these are going to be waived, or if there's going to be like an abatement type request that we can request the fees to be waived if there was a reasonable cause. Nothing on that so far. But this is why it's going to be so important that you track your information and track your filings so that you don't get caught up in this. Now, there is a safe harbor where if we filed something and it's inaccurate, maybe we left off a beneficial owner, we want to go back, we have 90 days to go back and correct it. So who files? Generally, it's small and medium-sized businesses. If you filed and created a business within your Secretary of State, it applies to you. If you're a sole prop, maybe you have just a DBA or an FBN, or you're just operating as a sole prop in your state and you're not registered, and it doesn't apply to you. So, but if you're registered in your state, it applies to you. Now, there are companies that are exempt. Here's a whole list. There's more on their website. Pretty much if it's a large company, publicly traded, there's already some kind of compliance or regulation involved at the government level, you're exempt because they already kind of got their hands in your pot. This is really trying to get information on the small businesses. So again, it affects a lot of my clients because we're all small business owners. Okay, so what if you own multiple companies or you have ownership in multiple companies or control in multiple companies? um, what you can do instead of basically sending your passport or driver's license off to all the people who are filing these for the different entities is you as an individual can get a what's called a FinCEN identifier. So you obtain basically a unique ID for yourself. You upload your own information, your own passport, you monitor that. And then when the entity goes to file, instead of uploading all your information, they just use your ID as part of that process. And if you do this online, the website says it's immediate that you get the ID. So let me know if that's not the case. But this might simplify. As you can imagine, this explodes when you have companies with all these different people involved in it, or you as a person, individual, have ownership in a bunch of different companies and you have to file it multiple times. So this can simplify it for you. Filing piece. So if you do it yourself, there's no cost, zero cost. And honestly, it takes about 5 minutes if you have all the documents ready to go. The more important parts is just knowing who needs to be included and then tracking it. So I don't foresee a problem with somebody uploading their information today and getting their initial report done. It's when information changes or IDs expire, that's when people are going to get caught up. So if you're going to do it on your own, just be really diligent, set reminders on your calendar so that you don't get caught into those penalties. Now, there are multiple third-party services out there charging fees to file on your behalf. People are getting notices, and I'm sure you're going to get more if you own an entity in the mail from third-party services. They're charging $100 to $200 to file it for you. The only thing I recommend is if you use a third-party service is you get someone who tracks the IDs and dates for you, because that's the biggest risk here is that we're going to forget, right? So if they add that into their fee, then it's probably worth paying someone to do it for you. So who can see it? Right now, depending on the state that you file with, people start LCs maybe in Wyoming because it doesn't show information on who the owners are. In California, it shows all your information. So it just depends on the state where your information's out there when you form an entity, a business. For this filing, it is not public information. It's not going to be searchable. Someone's not going to be able to go on Google and search and find who the beneficial owners are for entities. Now, it is creating a federal database, and if there is any kind of investigation, litigation, criminal activity, then those type of parties involved in those actions can request access to the BOI information for those entities so that they can pursue it. So it's more of a criminal. Uh, it's not going to be accessible to everybody. Basically, you're not going to be able to go to search it. And I know that that's a big concern because there's very much this fear of this being like Big Brother oversight into our personal information. But at least they're not going to make it so that someone can crawl the different files and put it out there on a website. So where do you go to file? fincen.gov/BOI. There's links on here for FinCEN identifier. I also, there's a great FAQ page. Like if you go on the website, you can just click underneath filing. There's a help and it goes to FAQ, frequently asked questions page. And there's tons and tons of questions. So you can spend all day there if your heart desires to read more on it. I also have a blog on it. Trying to propagate and educate you all so that you don't get caught up in those fines. This is brand new and it isn't something we can avoid. We need to get it done. And for most of us, we need to get it done before the end of 2024. If you have any questions or had a different experience, have worked with, maybe had something that happened, would love to hear about it in the comments. If you used a service you really loved, also would love to hear about that as well. Someone who's monitoring it for you. But that's it for me. All right. So good luck. Get out there, file your BOI report, get it done, put the reminders in your calendar so that you can avoid penalties and fines.